The name on the screen made me stop cold. Mrs. Templeton. I hadn't seen or heard from her in over 12 years. She was our next-door neighbor back in Indianapolis when I still lived with my parents. Retired kindergarten teacher, always wore giant sunglasses like she was hiding from the paparazzi. Always had an opinion on everyone's business. Her message was short, just a single sentence. I'm so sorry about your parents. I can't believe what I saw today. That was it. No hello, no explanation, just that. Then there was a video attached. My gut twisted before I even pressed play. It opened inside St. Andrew's Church. I recognized the stained glass windows right away. My parents dragged me there every Easter whether I wanted to go or not. I hadn't stepped foot in that place since I was 19. At the front of the church stood two people in black, my mom and dad. My mom wore some high-necked black dress, her hands clutching a tissue she barely used. My dad stood stiff, reading something from a folded piece of paper. His voice was shaky, but it didn't sound like grief. It sounded rehearsed. I squinted at the screen. There was a coffin between them. I leaned closer, heart starting to pound. Then I saw the framed photo beside it. A giant image of me. That photo was taken years ago. I remembered the exact day. It was from high school graduation. I was standing next to our pickup truck, smiling like I hadn't been kicked in the gut yet by life. The lilies around the photo looked fresh, the casket looked closed, and my parents looked like they were actually trying to squeeze out a few tears. Except I wasn't dead. I was standing in my kitchen in Knoxville, wearing a ripped t-shirt and boxers, watching my own goddamn funeral. Quick note, before listening, share in the comments which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. I watched the whole thing through once, my mind spinning like a busted ceiling fan. When it ended, I hit replay. I needed to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. My hands were shaking now, but I couldn't stop watching. What the hell was this? A prank? Some cruel mistake? Or something way worse? The video kept playing. My mom dabbed her eyes again. My dad's voice started. He was always difficult, but we loved him. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. My dad's voice kept going, steady and low, like he was reading instructions off the back of a cereal box. He was always difficult, but we loved him. I paused the video. I sat there, holding the phone in both hands, screen glowing in the dark kitchen. I looked around my apartment, cracked tile under my feet, toolbox open on the floor, cup of coffee going cold. My heart was still racing, but I was here, breathing, alive, and apparently, according to the people who gave me life, I wasn't. I hit play again. My dad stood up straight at the pulpit, not hunched or broken like someone mourning a son. His eyes didn't well up, his hands didn't shake. He looked like a man delivering a speech at a banquet. My mom sat beside him, nodding softly, fake tears blinking off her cheeks like she was proud of how convincing she could be. I scrubbed back and listened to the beginning again. We lost him to a tragic accident. He died far from home, but we never stopped praying for peace to find him. Bullshit. I hadn't spoken to either of them in 5 years, not since they threw me out and made sure I stayed gone. No texts, no calls, nothing. And now here they were, pretending they missed me, pretending they loved me. I kept watching. My mom looked down dramatically when my dad said the words, his final years in solitude. My jaw clenched. My final years? I was in Tennessee busting my back pouring concrete, not rotting in some ditch. The camera panned slowly across the pews. That's when my stomach really dropped. It wasn't just my parents playing along. The whole damn town was in there. My Uncle Doug, my Aunt Sandy, my old baseball coach, Coach Brecker. He was sitting in the front row with a tissue to his face. He once told me I had the best swing he'd seen since '98. I'd helped him move a couch into his new house. And there he was, mourning like I'd been buried 6 feet under instead of sleeping in my apartment an 8-hour drive away. Neighbor after neighbor, classmates, distant cousins, a few guys I used to drink with back in the day. I recognized every one of them. Not a single one had called. Not a single one had messaged. They didn't just bury me, they erased me. The choir started singing something low and dramatic. I didn't catch the hymn. The camera moved back to the pulpit, and now my mom stood there holding a folded letter. Her voice wobbled, but her words came clean. He drifted away from us, but he was once full of life. We remember him when he laughed, when he helped his father in the shop, when he came home late with dirt on his boots and a smile on his face. She paused, looked out into the crowd like she was waiting for tears to rise. Then she added, "We forgive him, and we pray he forgives us." My fingers curled so tight around the phone I almost cracked the damn case. Forgive them? For what exactly? For lying to every person in that room? For staging a funeral while I was still breathing? For turning my name into a sympathy parade so they could sit up front and soak in the attention? I skipped ahead. I couldn't watch them fake their way through another line of crap. I landed on a part where the priest stood in front of the casket. His hands were folded, his voice soft. We may never know what truly happened in his final days, but we trust in God's mercy. I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, it wasn't. It was the kind of laugh that came out when you were too pissed to cry. My final days were yesterday and the day before that, laying pipe on a site just outside Chattanooga, sweating through 90-degree heat, eating a sandwich on a milk crate. I skipped again. The camera caught another wide shot of the crowd, and there, sitting in the fourth pew on the aisle, was someone I didn't expect, Caleb. He looked clean, fresh haircut, navy suit that definitely wasn't cheap. His wife was beside him, blonde, manicured, looking down at the floor like this whole show was beneath her. Caleb wasn't crying. He wasn't even pretending to. He sat with one arm draped lazily around her shoulders, watching it all like a movie he'd already seen. And maybe he had, because nothing about this felt spontaneous. You don't bury a son by accident. You don't convince a church full of people that someone died without putting in a hell of a lot of work. And you definitely don't stand at a pulpit talking about solitude and forgiveness unless you've spent years crafting a damn good story. I let the video run out. The priest made the sign of the cross. The choir sang the final verse. The crowd stood in silence as they wheeled the casket toward the back. I watched my own body get taken away, and still, not one person had called. Not one person had asked if it was true. They buried me and moved on like I'd never existed. And I was just getting started. That video didn't blindside me out of nowhere. It was just the final slap in the face. The beginning of all this? That was 5 years ago, when $94,000 disappeared from our family business. We ran a small-time contracting company in Indianapolis. My dad built it up from nothing, and when I got old enough, I handled the books. Invoices, payroll, filing taxes, all the stuff he didn't have the patience for. I wasn't great at it, but I was honest. I never touched a dime I didn't earn. But that summer, things got weird. Clients started calling about double charges. Our supplier froze deliveries over a missed payment. One day, I opened the account and saw the balance had dropped by nearly 6 figures. $94,000. Gone. I didn't take it. That money never even crossed my hands. But Caleb, he had his own habits. And by habits, I mean gambling. My younger brother, the golden boy. The one they never said no to. He was charming, smooth-talking, always knew how to spin a story. He started betting in high school, lost some scholarships, blew through savings, but still got defended like he was a misunderstood genius. At first, I kept my mouth shut. I figured we'd dig into the numbers, realize it was a mistake, maybe wire fraud or a client screwing us over. But then Mom pulled me into the garage. She didn't yell. She didn't ask what happened. She just looked me in the eye and said, "Better one son ruined than two." I remember the oil stains under my boots, the air thick with summer heat. I stood there in shock, thinking maybe I misheard, but she said it again, slower. Better one son ruined than two. That's when I knew. She already knew who did it. They weren't looking for the truth. They needed someone to blame, and I was the one they could afford to lose. I walked inside, found my dad in the kitchen. He didn't say anything. Just stood at the sink, arms stiff, looking out the window like he couldn't even stand the sight of me. "You embarrassed us," he muttered. No proof, no conversation, just that. Next morning I was gone, took what clothes I could fit in a duffel, grabbed my toolbox and left. No apology, no goodbye, no money. I tried calling a few days later, straight to voicemail. Tried texting Mom, nothing. Called Caleb. He didn't even bother to decline the call, just let it ring. I called 2 of my old friends, guys I'd known since middle school. First one told me he was staying out of it. Second one never responded. Within a week, I was locked out of every part of my old life. I drove down to Tennessee, ended up in Knoxville with no real plan. I took a job laying drywall under the table, just to eat. Rented a room from a guy named Joel who chain smoked and watched cooking shows on full volume. It wasn't much, but it kept me moving. Eventually, I got legit work. Got my own place, changed my number, told myself I didn't need family, that I was better off without them. But that was a lie. Every birthday, every holiday, every time I saw a mother hug her son in public, or watched a dad teaching his kid how to fix a flat, I felt it. That ache. That slow-burning reminder that I'd been tossed aside like trash, and no one even looked back. They treated me like a mistake. And Caleb? He never once reached out. Not a message. Not even a coward's apology in the middle of the night. I'd kept tabs from a distance. Once in a while I'd search his name on Facebook or check his wife's Instagram just to see what the good son was up to. Most of the time it made me sick, so I stopped. But after watching that funeral video, something cracked open. I wasn't just cast out. I was erased, buried, rewritten. And the people who did it? My own family? They were living just fine with it. I set the phone down on the counter and leaned on both hands. My reflection stared back from the microwave door. I looked older, not just 5 years older, worn down, but sharper too. They wanted to make me disappear quietly. They should have made sure I stayed dead. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My brain wouldn't shut up. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that casket again. That goddamn photo. My mother's tissue. My father's smug speech. By sunrise, I was at my laptop. I remembered something that didn't make sense. A year back, I'd tried logging into my old email. The one tied to everything before I left Indiana. Couldn't get in. Thought maybe I forgot the password, but the reset didn't work. Ended up calling tech support and sitting on hold for an hour. When a guy finally answered, he asked for my name, date of birth, last login. I gave it all. There was this long pause. Then he said, Sir, it says here the account holder is deceased. I blinked at the screen. Deceased? That's what I have in the system. I'm sorry. I can't give out more information unless you're listed as next of kin. At the time, I'd cursed under my breath and hung up. Figured it was some database error or security update gone wrong. But now it hit different. I pulled up the state records site for Indiana and started digging. Took about 20 minutes, a few clunky form searches, and there it was. My full name, listed as legally deceased. Date of death, June 28th. Cause, motorcycle accident overseas. Certificate ID, FD-4871. Issue date, July 2nd. I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned. I've never even sat on a motorcycle, let alone taken one overseas. I downloaded the certificate. It looked real. Watermark, seal, even some coroner's signature at the bottom. Foreign place of death listed as Lisbon, Portugal. I leaned back in the chair, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. They'd really done it. They didn't just fake grief. They didn't just hold a funeral and play dress-up with their pain. They filed government paperwork. They faked a death certificate. They made it official. I called my Uncle Roy first. He was the only one I thought might give it to me straight. Phone rang twice before he picked up. Hello? Uncle Roy. It's me. Silence. It's Nathan. Click. He didn't even say a word. I called again, straight to voicemail. I went down the list. Aunt Sandy, no answer. Cousin Melanie, voicemail. I tried my cousin Jared, who used to crash at my place during college. He picked up, laughed the second he heard my voice, and said, "Man, you're sick, that's not funny," before hanging up. No one believed it was me. Or worse, they did, and they didn't care. Then I got a text from Jesse, the youngest of the cousins. He was 19 now, I think. We used to play Halo and shoot BB guns in the backyard. They said you died traveling in Portugal. Closed casket. Cremated. I replied instantly, "I'm alive. This is really me." Then I sent a photo, time-stamped selfie, holding my ID next to today's newspaper. He freaked out. Blew up my phone with a flood of texts. WTF. How? Wait. They lied? Dude. They've all moved on. They didn't even question it. Then the last one. Why would they do that? I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know how to answer yet. Not fully. But I was going to find out. I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Every place I'd worked. Every lease I'd signed. Pay stubs. Bank statements. Anything that proved I'd been alive and working since the day they said I died. I wasn't just going to yell into the void. I was going to build a case. Because if they thought I'd roll over and disappear again, they were about to get a very rude awakening. I spent the next 2 days buried in paperwork. I pulled out every scrap I could find. Passport stamps, W-2s, pay stubs, lease agreements, receipts from the DMV. Anything with a date and my name on it. Every time I found another piece of proof, it pissed me off even more. I wasn't just alive. I'd been working my ass off the entire time they were crying at altars and filing fake death certificates. Once I had a thick stack going, I made a pot of coffee and opened up social media. I hadn't checked in years. I typed in Caleb's name, half expecting his account to be private, but nope, wide open. The first photo punched me right in the gut. A huge backyard cookout, probably 30 people deep. Folding tables covered in food, speakers set up by the patio. My mom was there, laughing. My dad had a beer in hand. Caleb stood front and center, grilling like a king, with a brand new patio kitchen behind him. His wife had her arm hooked around his, her hand lifted just enough to show off a massive rock on her finger. That wasn't the engagement ring I remembered. That thing was easily 10 grand minimum. And then I saw it. A post from last summer. Can't believe it's been 10 years. Love you more now than ever. Vow renewal day. I clicked through the album. Caleb in a tux, his wife in a new dress. A full ceremony set up in a field behind someone's barn. White chairs, white string lights, one of those wedding arches people rent off Pinterest. And right in the middle, my dad giving a toast. I knew the way he held the mic. The pause before he said it. I'd heard it before. At my high school graduation, at my 21st birthday, to the son who never let us down. Caleb stood next to him, grinning like he just hit a home run. My mom clapped. Everyone laughed and raised glasses. I nearly slammed my laptop shut. That toast used to be mine. That line was something my dad always said about me. When I pulled a double shift and still made it to family dinner. When I paid off my first car without asking for help. When I stayed behind to clean up the job site so the others could head home. And now it was Caleb's. The same Caleb who racked up tens of thousands in gambling debt. The same one who stole from the company and let me take the fall. I opened a second tab and went straight to the county clerk's site. I searched for any public records on the family business, on Caleb, on anything tied to our last name. It took hours. I went cross-eyed, clicking through PDFs and scanned documents. Then I found it. An internal asset transfer filed 6 months after my death, signed and notarized. The beneficiary name updated on the trust my grandfather left behind. That trust was supposed to be mine. Grandpa told me himself years ago, when I used to help him fix up the old fishing cabin. He said, "This is for you, Nathan. Someday you'll run the business, and this'll help you build something bigger." I clicked the document. There it was, original trustee, Nathan James Carter. Updated trustee, Caleb Henry Carter. Date of change, January 4th, exactly 6 months after the date on my death certificate. They waited just long enough for everything to clear legally. Then they rewrote history. I felt it in my bones. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment reaction to family drama. This was a long game, a cleanup job. They didn't just cut me out. They used my disappearance, my silence, my exile. They turned it into a gold mine. With me out of the picture, they could give Caleb the clean image he needed. No scandal, no criminal record, no brother around to question where the money went. They faked a tragedy to erase a mess. And now the company was his. The trust was his. My identity, my future, the life I should have had, all transferred with a signature and a lie. I stood up and paced the living room, hands on my head, lungs burning. This wasn't about grief. It never had been. This was about profit, about a clean narrative, a better version of the family, one where Caleb was the responsible son, the heir, the face of the business. And me? I was just the dark chapter they pretended didn't happen. I walked to the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and pulled down a half-empty bottle of bourbon I'd been ignoring for months. I didn't drink to forget. I drank to remember. Every insult, every lie, every time I got ghosted by someone who once claimed to love me. They thought they got away with it, thought the lie was buried, but I was digging it back up. 2 days later, I walked into a law office with a manila folder thick enough to choke a printer. I didn't bother calling ahead. Didn't ask if they handled identity fraud or probate law or anything else I probably should have researched. I just walked in, slapped my name on the sign-in sheet, and sat down. The receptionist looked at me like she wasn't sure if I was lost or about to cause a scene. I was doing both. They paired me with a young attorney, maybe late 20s, dark suit, short hair, glasses that made him look like he still asked his mom for dinner recipes. He shook my hand, led me into a small glass-walled office, and asked what he could help with. I sat down, dropped the folder onto his desk with a dull thud, and opened it. On top, my death certificate. I slid it across the desk. Let's start here. He looked down, read for a second, then looked back up like maybe I was screwing with him. I'm not dead, I said flatly, but I plan to make them wish I was. His eyebrows raised, but he didn't laugh. He leaned forward instead. That's when I knew I had the right guy. We went document by document. I showed him pay stubs from Knoxville, time-stamped photos, lease agreements, tax filings, anything that proved I'd been alive every single day since the state said I died in a motorcycle accident overseas. He asked questions, sharp ones. Do you have a passport? Yes. Did you file taxes every year? Every one. Anyone else who can confirm you're alive and unrelated to the people who filed this? My boss. Landlord. Bank representative, pick one. We spent 3 hours building a case. By the end, he leaned back in his chair, pushed his glasses up, and let out a long breath. Okay, he said. We'll start by filing a motion to overturn the death record. That'll require sworn testimony and a court appearance. Then we file for identity reinstatement and formally report fraud, both to the state and federal level. The fake certificate? That's a felony. Depending on who signed it, someone's looking at prison time. Good, I said. Make it all stick. He paused. Just so you're aware, this kind of case doesn't move fast. Could be weeks, months even. I nodded, but I wasn't listening. My phone buzzed in my jacket. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me not to. I pulled it out, tapped the message. They're holding a memorial for you this Sunday. St. Andrews, 10 a.m. That church again. Same one from the video, same stained glass. I stared at the screen, my stomach going cold. They weren't done. They were still doubling down. A second funeral. For someone still breathing. My jaw tightened. I handed the phone to the lawyer. Read that. He scanned it. They're still going? Apparently. You want to respond? I looked him dead in the eye. Number. I want to attend. He hesitated, then said, That's not a good idea. I cut him off. That's not your call. The room went quiet. Then I stood, collected the folder, and said, We don't have months. We have 5 days. He didn't argue, just nodded. Then let's make them count. I walked out of that office with my boots hitting the tile like gunshots. I felt electric, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not because I had a plan, not yet, but because I had a target. And now I had the law behind me. Sunday morning, I parked across the street from St. Andrew's Church in a black coat and dark sunglasses. I hadn't been there in over a decade, but everything still looked the same. Same crooked iron fence, same cracked sidewalk, same rust on the drainpipe no one ever fixed. Rain had fallen earlier. The pavement was still damp, and I watched the line of cars pulling in slow like a funeral parade. People stepped out dressed in black, umbrellas opening, hands clasping each other's arms like this was some tragic reunion. They hugged. Some cried. Some smiled in that hushed, guilty way people do at church when they think grief gives them permission to whisper gossip in the pews. And every one of them looked right past the man sitting in the Dodge Ram across the street. The dead man, apparently. I watched them go inside, one by one. My Uncle Roy, Aunt Sandy, a few cousins I hadn't seen since Grandma's funeral, even Coach Brecker, all acting like they hadn't lied to the government, buried a breathing man, and split up the spoils. What hit hardest was seeing kids, new faces, ones I didn't recognize. Jesse was there, awkward in a wrinkled suit, talking to some girl with black nails and a nose ring. He kept looking around, eyes scanning the parking lot like he knew I'd show. I gave it another 10 minutes, just long enough for the organ to start echoing through the walls. I could feel the bass of it vibrating under my boots as I crossed the street. When I reached the front steps, I slowed. 2 older women stood just inside the doorway, handing out printed programs. I grabbed one. My photo was right on the cover, same damn shot from graduation, framed with a Bible verse underneath. He fought the good fight. He finished the race. He kept the faith. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I folded the paper in half and slid it into my coat pocket. I waited just inside the entryway. The pews were packed. The priest gave some opening remarks, then stepped aside. And just like the first time, my father stood to speak. Same tone, same stance, like he was reading an award introduction, not a eulogy. He lost his way, but we never stopped loving him. I moved closer to the doors, slow, quiet. He lived in darkness, my dad went on, but we remember his light. My mother dabbed her eyes again. A sniffle here, a subtle sob there. Her hand trembled as she squeezed Caleb's arm. He stood tall, chin up, face tight like he'd practiced in the mirror. The weight of fake sadness dripping off him in just the right measure. They were all so damn proud of this act. Then the priest stepped forward. "Let's bow our heads," he said. "Let's have a moment of silence in memory of Nathan Carter, beloved son, brother, and friend." That was my cue. I pushed open the double doors. The creak rolled through the room like a gunshot. Dozens of heads turned in unison. Whispers rose fast, sharp. A woman in the second pew gasped loud enough for the back row to hear. I stepped through the threshold and started walking down the aisle. No rush, just one foot in front of the other. Let them watch. Let them panic. The priest took a step back. My father froze. My mother stared like she'd seen a ghost, mouth open, hand clutching the pew for balance. Caleb? He didn't move, didn't blink. He just stared, lips pressed flat, jaw tight, beads of sweat forming at his hairline. I kept walking. My boots echoed over the tile. Everyone stared. Some looked scared, others confused. A few kids whispered to their parents. Halfway down the aisle, I passed Jesse. He didn't say anything, just slowly mouthed, "Holy shit." I reached the front, stopped right below the altar and turned to face them. Behind me, That same photo hung over a pedestal. My face, the one they used to bury me. I took off my sunglasses, looked straight at my father and said, "You giving the same speech from last time, or is this a new version?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I turned to the crowd. Some of you might be confused. Some of you might think this is a miracle. It's not. I'm not back from the dead. I was never gone. I reached into my coat and pulled out a folder. Here's my lease agreement from the last 3 years. Here's a W-2 from the drywall company I work for. Here's a copy of my passport, issued 4 years ago. Tax returns, credit card bills, proof of life, dated and notarized. Murmurs spread like wildfire. There was no motorcycle crash, no tragic accident in Portugal, no cremation. I locked eyes with Caleb. There was just betrayal, lies, and money. Caleb swallowed hard. I turned to my father. "You faked my death. You filed government paperwork. You staged a memorial. You stood in this exact spot and told this town I died. And you all believed it." Gasps. Movement in the pews. I looked back to the crowd, let it sink in. They used my name, my trust, my silence. They erased me to clean up their mess. Silence. And then my mother fainted. Right there, like someone had flipped a switch. She crumpled into Caleb's arms. He caught her, barely, eyes still locked on me as he lowered her to the pew. My father dropped his glass of water. Shards scattered at his feet. And the priest? He just stood there, stunned, hands shaking. I stepped back once. Let them sit with it. I wasn't done yet. I didn't move when my mom hit the pew. Didn't flinch when the glass shattered at my dad's feet. I just stood there, breathing slow, letting the weight of the room shift toward me. Then I turned, walked back toward the center of the aisle, and started moving forward again. Slow, steady, each step echoing off the stone floor. People parted like I was radioactive. Whispers followed me. A woman near the back clutched her chest and whispered, "Is that?" A kid tugged his mom's arm and said, "Mom, that's him. That's the guy in the picture." I kept walking. The room buzzed behind me. Stunned silence fighting with disbelief. Caleb stood frozen halfway down the aisle, holding Mom up with one arm and gripping the pew with the other. His face had lost all color. The shine on his forehead was sweat. When I reached the altar again, I turned to face the crowd, this time not as a ghost, but as proof they'd all been played. I looked right at the priest first. "I heard I died," I said. My voice carried without a mic. "I'm here to correct the record." No one made a sound. I held up the folder again, pulling out documents one by one. Lease agreement in Knoxville, signed and dated, 5 years ago. I held up the next one. Tax returns. Every year since I supposedly died in a motorcycle crash in Portugal. Never even been to Portugal. More pages, bank statements, stamped contracts from job sites, copies of my driver's license and passport. All current, all mine. I set them on the altar. You don't bury a man who files taxes every spring and pays rent every first of the month. I looked at the faces staring back, all of them once convinced I was ashes in an urn. There was no accident, no crash, no overseas tragedy, just betrayal. One long, calculated lie told by the people who were supposed to protect me. A few heads turned toward my father. Others just stared straight ahead, not blinking. Like if they didn't move, they couldn't be implicated. I turned to the side, locked eyes with Caleb. Enjoy the house, the company car, the Rolex. I took a step toward him. All paid for with my life. You didn't just take the money. You took my name, my future, my blood, and then you threw dirt on it like it never existed. His jaw worked, but no words came out. He looked like a man choking on his own excuses. I pointed to the congregation. Every person in this room sat through a funeral that never should have happened. You listened to stories about my final days like you didn't have the means to find out if they were true. You mourned a man who was still making grocery runs and punching a time card. My voice cracked, just a little. You didn't bury me, you erased me, and now I'm here to make sure you all remember exactly who I am. I turned back to Caleb. You stole from the company, and when it caught up with you, you let them frame me. You let them ruin me. And when that wasn't enough, you all made sure the state thought I was dead. He finally spoke, voice hoarse. You don't understand what it was like. No, I snapped. You don't get to play victim now. I looked at my father. He was still gripping the podium like it was the only thing keeping him upright. You could have called me, asked, shown up. You did none of that. You went straight to the courthouse and filed the paperwork to wipe me out. His mouth opened, but I cut him off. And Mom, her last words to me were, better one son ruined than two. Guess she got her wish. People were shifting now, guilt creeping in, the realization setting deep. I don't want your apologies, I said. I don't want your pity. I tapped the stack of proof again. What I want is already in motion. The state's reopening your records. My attorney has this entire case. You'll be seeing subpoenas soon. A wave of gasps. One man stood up and walked out, shaking his head. I scanned the room one last time, slow and deliberate. This wasn't grief. It was theft dressed in black, and I'm here to take it back. I turned from the altar, walked straight down the aisle without looking back, and pushed open the doors. The sunlight outside hit hard. It didn't feel warm, but it felt real. I stepped out of that church and onto the sidewalk, and no one followed me. No rush of footsteps, no shouts, no apologies. Just silence. Not the kind reserved for grief or prayer. This wasn't holy. This was shame, pure and heavy, sitting on their shoulders like a storm about to break. I got in my truck, tossed the folder onto the passenger seat, and drove. Next morning, I walked into my lawyer's office and handed him the last packet. Originals. All signed, sealed, time-stamped. He flipped through it, double-checked everything, then held up the death certificate with both hands. Looked me straight in the face. You ready? I nodded once. He tore it in half. Clean, right through the middle. The moment it split, I felt something lift. Like I'd just punched my way out of a sealed box. I was officially back. 2 days later, the state opened formal investigations. Insurance fraud, falsified documents, embezzlement. Someone had signed off on a fake death to close out a trust fund and file a false life insurance claim. Guess what? They traced it all. Caleb got hit first, subpoena delivered to his office in front of half his crew. I heard he didn't show up to work the next day. My parents' accounts got frozen next. Retirement, savings, all of it under review. The lie had too many fingerprints on it, and the state was ready to check every damn one. Meanwhile, I rented a place upstate. Small one-story with a broken fence and a busted dryer. Paint peeling off the porch. But it was mine. Lease in my name. Utilities under my number. No one else's signature. No handouts. The first night I slept there, I didn't dream. Just closed my eyes and passed out cold. A week later, Jesse called. Dude, your speech? It's all over YouTube. I sat in my truck with the window cracked, staring at the gas pump blinking $67.42. He kept talking. Someone filmed the whole thing. Full clip. Walking down the aisle, the proof, everything. It's got like, I don't know, 80,000 views. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. That church was packed. That lie had weight, and now it had witnesses. Let them watch. Let them replay it 100 times. Let them sit with the fact they clapped at a funeral that never should have happened. I hung up, started the engine, rolled the window up. For the first time in years, my name was mine again. Not an obituary. Not a whispered cautionary tale. Not a sob story told by liars in suits. Just a man, alive, legally, publicly, undeniably. They tried to bury me for money. I came back for my name. Would you have walked into that church or stayed gone forever? Drop your answer in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.